With some new revelations and a new letter tonight is Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator Graham, good to have you with us this evening.
Thank you. That was a mouthful.
Yeah, it certainly was. I hope it made sense.
There'll be a test at the end of this
Exactly.
segment,
There'll be a
folks.
quiz when we're done. And not only that, but now we're going to lay some new information on top of all of this, because you have put out a new memo today that highlights an email that Susan Rice, advisor to President Obama, wrote to herself on Inauguration Day 2017. Can you explain to us what you found there?
Yes, I found an odd and disturbing email from Susan Rice. At 12:15 on January the 20th, the day of the inauguration, she emails herself about a meeting that occurred on January the 5th in the Oval Office, and she says in the email that the president was being briefed by the intelligence community about Russian hacking in the 2016 election, and had a follow-on brief meeting with Sally Yates, Jim Comey, herself, and Vice President Biden, and she quotes what the president said. Now, this is an email to herself about a meeting with the president on January the 5th. President Obama began the conversation by stressing his continued commitment to ensuring that every aspect of this issue, the Russian investigation, is handled by the intelligence and law enforcement community by the book. In parentheses, by the book. The president stressed that he is not asking about, initiating, or instructing anything from a law enforcement perspective. He reiterated that our law enforcement team needs to proceed as it normally would by the book. So she's sending herself an email talking about a conversation on January the 5th with the president, reassuring herself and I guess the president that this would be done by the book. I think that's odd and disturbing because we know that the investigation regarding the Trump campaign was anything but by the book.
So why do you think has she responded to your letter, first of all?
We sent a letter to her saying, did you email yourself? Usually if you email yourself, it's about to pick up something, not about a conversation that seems to be very self-serving when the president's telling the law enforcement intel community, when you look at Trump associates, do it by the book. This meeting was on January the 5th. The email was sent on January the 20th. So what I'm worried about is it's an effort by the president to basically get himself on the record through Susan Rice to make sure that from his point of view, everything was done by the book. The question is, did the president know anything about the FISA warrant application? Did Susan Rice know that the warrant application included a dossier from Mr. Steele when he was on the payroll of the Democratic Party, coming from Russian sources, that he was a political operative being paid by the Democratic Party, and that the information in the FISA warrant application was a dossier that was political in nature, and that Mr. Steele hated President Trump, candidate Trump, and was trying to do everything he could to beat him. That's not exactly by the book.
You know, it's interesting because when you speak about that and the way that she wrote it, it reminds me in a way of, prior protestations on the part of President Obama, where he wanted to insist, during the IRS investigation, for example, and also during the Hillary Clinton investigation, that he was absolutely not involved in any of it, and that he, in both cases, believed that there would be no law-breaking found in any way. So perhaps, there's an effort to be on the record about this as well that Susan Rice wanted to document.
No question. I mean, it's the oddest thing in the world to send an email to yourself on Inauguration Day about a conversation held on January the 5th where the president tells the law enforcement community and the intel community, now, when you look at this Russian stuff, you need to do it by the book. That's an odd thing to be saying on January the 5th. Number one, why should he have to say that to begin with? Number two, what brought on that conversation on January the 5th? They knew they were going to be out of power just in days. They said an email trail showing the president was instructing everybody doing it by the book. And when you look at what happened, it was an abuse of power, not by the book. So this is really odd.
It also brings to mind the New York Times story, which was written about how you know, the Obama administration was concerned. They wanted to make sure that the little, you know, tea leaves were left for the Russia investigation, and they lowered the ability for people to be engaged in that in terms of their, you know, classification. And they wanted to make sure that as many people as possible saw what they saw as the clues out there, that there was something untoward with the Trump campaign in Russia. Is that connected to this, do you think?
Well, they were going to leave breadcrumbs, you know, to make sure that people could follow the Russian efforts to undermine the 2016 election. What did Comey say when the president allegedly told him, I want you to do it by the book? Do you think Comey mentioned to the president that the chief source of information regarding a FISA warrant on Carter Page came from a paid operative of the Democratic Party, Mr. Steele, who was on the payroll of Fusion GPS that was being paid by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party, that the dossier came from Russian sources, very unreliable, and it still hasn't been verified, that the number 4 guy in the FBI, Mr. Orr's wife, worked at Fusion GPS, who did the research for Mr. Steele? Do you think he told the president any of that? This is the oddest conversation I can imagine. Why are they talking about doing things by the book on January the 5th? And what did Comey say when he was told to do it by the book?
Senator Graham, thank you very much. We will follow this with great interest as we have throughout. We thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.